As a kid during the summers, I oftentimes would go out and play with my friends in the neighborhood. And we would play all day, just having all kinds of adventures. And I would continue to play until it was time to go home. Usually my mom either gave me a curfew or she would call out to me from the house because I was usually not that far away. And sometimes I got to stay out for a long, long time because mom didn't call me and I didn't have a curfew yet. And then when I'd get home, I'd realize that it wasn't because I never heard my mom calling, but because I wasn't listening. I was too busy having fun. I was too busy doing other things that I wasn't listening for her voice with my ears. Have you ever had that experience where you just don't hear someone else? Or sometimes when someone tells you their name when you meet them and you forget it right away? That's happened to me too many times, but as human beings, we can be bad listeners. We can be bad listeners and we don't really hear what other people are saying to us, or we don't hear someone when they're calling out to us. It sounds as if the people of Israel during the time of Samuel were not very good listeners either. It says that at that time, the revelation of the Lord was uncommon. A revelation of God to anyone was uncommon and visions infrequent. It wasn't very common to hear the voice of God. That is until Samuel comes along, and we hear that familiar reading today where he is in the temple sleeping and he hears the voice of the Lord call him 3 times. And he goes not to the temple to see the Lord, but rather to Eli, the priest there, and he says, "Here I am, you called me." And Eli each time says, "I didn't call you." And finally he figures out that the Lord is calling Samuel. Samuel has to learn to discern the voice of God. The same is true for each of us. We have to learn to discern the voice of the Lord in our own lives, because it's not for lack of God speaking to us that we don't hear his voice, but rather that we don't know how to properly listen, or we don't know what his voice really sounds like. So here's a couple of tips on hearing the voice of God. First of all, sometimes we think that we're going to hear something that is totally outside of us that speaks to us, like some sort of great, beautiful moment, like falling down off of our horse like St. Paul did in the desert, and the Lord speaks to us from the clouds. Well, that could happen, but it's not very common either. A lot of times, the voice of God is heard in our hearts, or even in our thoughts. This is a cool thing that even our own thoughts, the way that we think, sometimes can reveal the voice of the Lord to us. If we are asking the Lord for something, we can listen to our own thoughts. And we have to learn how to discern our thoughts from the voice of God in our own head. And that's not always easy, but sometimes it can sound just like the Lord speaking. It can sound just like our own thoughts. And the way that we do that and the way we verify that is just by saying, "Lord, is that really what you want?" Or we can ask other people as well, someone who might be a trusted spiritual advisor. Is this the way that the Lord speaks? Do you think that this is the voice of the Lord? And the other way too is to discern what's not the Lord. In our own thought life, we can have thoughts that are demeaning, that are self-shaming, that tell us that we're not good. And that's definitely not the voice of God, because the Lord never shames us. The Lord never tells us that we're not good enough. Rather, the Lord only will convict us if we are falling into sin, but he will never shame us. He only speaks the voice of love. Oftentimes, also, the evil one will speak to us and tell us that we are bad, that we are not good in some way. That's not the way that the Lord speaks to us. Rather, he only will convict us of something that was not good. If it's something that's to make us better, that's the way that the Lord will speak. And if there's any sort of blanket statement, it will be that you are loved, you are wanted, you are worthy. So today, let's ask the Lord that we might listen better to his voice in our lives, so that we can better follow him with everything that we have and discern his voice and do his will.